You are currently living inside a corpse, the decaying remains of a second that died before your synapses could even register its passing. Your memory is a liar, a biological filter designed to stop you from seeing the raw, terrifying mechanics of a universe that does not actually care about your calendars. We cling to the idea of the past like a drowning man clings to a lead weight, convinced that because something happened, it is settled, fossilized, and immutable. But you have been deceived by the slow speed of your own perception. The truth is that the ink on the page of your history has not even dried yet. And worse, the hand holding the pen is currently reaching back from a tomorrow you have not lived. That breakfast you ate this morning was not a finished event. It was a negotiation that is still being litigated in the quantum basement of reality. You are not moving toward the future. You're being pulled into it by a vacuum created by events that are deciding to happen right now. Scientists have spent centuries building a fortress around the concept of causality, a rigid wall that separates what was from what will be. We tell ourselves that the arrow of time only flies one way because we see eggs break and coffee go cold, never the reverse. Yet, when we strip away the wetware of the human brain and look at the cold math of the cosmos, that arrow vanishes into a haze of bidirectional probability. There is no fundamental law of physics that forbids the future from reaching back and tugging on the sleeve of the past. The now you inhabit is actually a two-way street where the traffic is far more congested than your senses allow you to perceive. You feel like a passenger on a train, looking out the back window at the tracks receding into the distance, unaware that the tracks are being laid down behind you by the very movement of the engine. Your childhood, your first heartbreak, and that mistake you made 10 minutes ago are all still fluid, waiting for a future observation to lock them into a definite state. To understand why your sense of history is a hallucination, we have to dismantle the very foundation of how you perceive cause and effect. We are addicts of sequence, junkies for the before and the after, because our survival once depended on knowing that a rustle in the grass preceded a predator asleep. This evolutionary baggage has blinded us to the reality that the universe is a single, massive, self-consistent block where every moment is connected by a thread that does not care about your clocks. Your birth was not a starting point, and your death is not a destination. There are 2 points on a loop that are constantly communicating with each other. If you feel a sudden, inexplicable chill right now, it might not be a draft in the room, but the ripples of a choice you have not made yet. We are about to descend into the quantum basement, where the rules of the surface world are discarded like useless junk. Prepare yourself to lose the comfort of the yesterday you thought you knew, because we are about to prove that the past is a draft that the future is still editing. The tyranny of causality is the most successful propaganda campaign in the history of the universe. It convinces you that the world is a series of falling dominoes, each one tipping the next in a predictable, irreversible line. This mental model is a byproduct of entropy, the slow, messy heat death of the cosmos that gives us the illusion of a forward-marching timeline. Because it is easier for a glass to shatter than for the shards to jump back onto the table, we assume that time itself has an inherent direction. But entropy is a statistical observation, not a fundamental restriction on the behavior of subatomic particles. In the microscopic world, the equations of motion are perfectly symmetrical, meaning they work just as well if you run them backward. Your brain, however, is a high-entropy machine that requires a linear narrative to function without crashing. It forces a sequence onto a reality that is fundamentally simultaneous, making you believe that the cause must always precede the effect. Think about the last time you felt a sense of regret for a decision you made years ago. You treat that event as a closed file, a static monument in the graveyard of your personal history. But this perspective ignores the fact that the past version of you was a collection of quantum states that had not yet been fully resolved by the observer you are today. We are trapped in a feedback loop where our current observations are constantly retroactively justifying the states of the system that led us here. The reason you remember the past and not the future is not because the future has not happened, but because your biological hardware is oriented toward the low entropy state of the Big Bang. We're like people trying to read a book by looking only at the shadows cast by the letters, never realizing the text itself exists all at once on the page. The arrow of time is a crutch, a necessary fiction that keeps our fragile consciousness from dissolving into the chaotic sea of the now. If we could strip away the biological filters of the human experience, we would see a universe that looks more like a crystal than a river. In this block universe, every moment of your life, from your first breath to your last, exists with equal validity and permanence. There is no special present moment moving through time. There's only a vast, four-dimensional structure where the past is just a direction, like left or down. The only reason you feel like you're moving forward is that your brain is a recording device that only writes in one direction. This creates a false sense of security, a belief that the things behind you are safe and unchangeable. But quantum mechanics suggests that the edges of this crystal are still vibrating, still being shaped by the interactions occurring at the other end. That scar on your knee from a childhood fall might actually be the result of a quantum measurement you will perform in a laboratory 20 years from now. John Wheeler, a man who spent his life wrestling with the ghosts of the quantum world, proposed a thought experiment that turns our understanding of history into a joke. He took the classic double-slit experiment, where a particle acts like a wave until it is observed, and stretched it across the entire cosmos. A photon is emitted by a distant quasar billions of years ago, traveling across the void of space toward Earth. On its way, it encounters a massive galaxy that acts as a gravitational lens, bending the light and offering it two different paths to reach your telescope. According to standard logic, that photon chose its path eons before humans even evolved, a settled fact of ancient history. But Wheeler realized that if we wait until the photon arrives at Earth to decide how we measure it, we can force it to have taken only one path or both paths simultaneously. Our choice in the present moment literally dictates the history of a particle that has been traveling since the dawn of time. This is not just a theoretical headache. It is a documented reality of the physical world. When we perform the delayed choice experiment in a lab, we see that the photon knows what kind of measurement we're going to make before we even make it. If we set up our detectors to see which path the photon took, it behaves like a particle. If we set them up to see an interference pattern, it behaves like a wave. The kicker is that we can change our minds about the measurement after the photon has already passed the point of no return. The particle effectively rewrites its own biography to match the demands of the observer in its future. This implies that the billions of years of cosmic history leading up to this moment are not a fixed record, but a set of possibilities waiting for us to look at them. Your act of looking at the stars tonight is participating in the creation of the very light that left those stars before the Earth was even a ball of molten rock. We are forced to confront the possibility that the universe is a self-excited circuit, a system that uses the future to bootstrap the past into existence. If a measurement today can determine the path of a photon billions of years ago, then the concept of before loses all its teeth. We are living in a reality where the end of the story is busy writing the beginning, ensuring that the entire narrative remains logically consistent. This retrocausality suggests that the events of your life are not just a chain of accidents, but a coordinated negotiation between who you were and who you are going to be. The past is not a solid foundation upon which the future is built. It is a reflection cast by the future onto the fog of the beginning. You might think you are reading these words because you clicked a link a moment ago, but it is just as likely that you clicked that link because the you at the end of this script needed to have already read them. If this feels like the ground is dissolving beneath your feet, that is because the ground was never there to begin with. We have mistaken the map of causality for the territory of existence, and the map is upside down. The echo from tomorrow is not a metaphor. It is the fundamental mechanism by which the universe prevents itself from being a chaotic mess of unresolved probabilities. We are the architects of our own history, wielding the power of observation to carve a single path through the infinite maze of what could have been. But if the future is already reaching back to shape the past, we have to ask, who is really in control of the pen? As we move deeper into the quantum handshake, you will start to realize that the person you remember being yesterday is actually a ghost sent from your own future to make sure you arrive on time. You are not falling into the future. You are being summoned by it, and the past you think you know is just the sound of the door closing behind you. The door does not just close, it locks, but the key is being forged in a furnace that has not even been lit yet. When physicists look at the equations governing electromagnetic waves, they find a curious, inconvenient truth that we usually scrub out of the textbooks like a shameful secret. Maxwell's equations, the very foundation of how light moves, offer two perfectly valid solutions for every wave. One that moves forward into the future and one that moves backward into the past. We call the backward-moving one the advanced wave, and for a century, we've treated it as a mathematical ghost, a glitch in the machinery that does not correspond to the real world. We discard it because it violates our precious sense of sequence. But John Cramer looked at that ghost and realized it was not a haunting. It was a blueprint. He proposed the transactional interpretation, a model where every event in the universe is a two-way negotiation across the timeline. An electron does not just sit there. It sends out an offer wave that ripples forward through time, searching for a receiver in the future. This offer wave is a broadcast of potentiality, a scream into the void of what might happen next. But the universe is a closed loop, and the future is not a passive recipient of these signals. It is an active participant in the deal. When that offer wave hits a potential absorber, say, an atom in your retina or a sensor in a camera, that absorber sends back a confirmation wave that travels backward through time to the source. This backward-moving signal is the advanced wave we tried so hard to ignore, and when it meets the forward-moving offer wave in the past, they form a standing wave. This is the quantum handshake, a temporal agreement that allows energy to be exchanged and an event to actually occur. Your current existence is not a result of things that happened before. It is a standing wave created by a negotiation between your birth and your death, happening simultaneously. You are the physical manifestation of a deal struck between the person you were and the person you will become, a transaction that is being finalized in the very second you think you are experiencing for the first time. The light hitting your eyes right now is currently shaking hands with the back of your skull in a way that defies every linear instinct you possess. That photon did not just travel from the screen to your pupil. It performed a handshake with your brain that was settled before the screen even emitted the light. If the future absorber had not been there to send the confirmation wave back in time, the source would never have sent the photon in the first place. This means the universe is not a series of accidents, but a self-consistent network of handshakes where every effect is reaching back to grab its own cause. We are habituated to think of time as a one-way street because our biological hardware is too slow to see the return traffic. We are effectively watching a movie and ignoring the fact that the projector and the screen are in a constant, instantaneous dialogue. You feel like a victim of history, but you are actually a co-author of it, constantly sending signals back to your younger self to ensure that the version of reality you are currently inhabiting is the one that actually manifests. If the handshake is the mechanism of existence, then the quantum eraser is the tool we use to prove that the past is a draft that can be tossed in the trash. In a standard laboratory, we can fire a photon through a barrier with two slits, and it will behave like a wave, creating a striped interference pattern on the wall that suggests it went through both slits at once. But the moment we try to be clever, the moment we place a detector at the slits to see which one the photon actually passed through, the pattern vanishes and the photon collapses into a single, localized particle. It is as if the universe refuses to be caught in a state of indecision once we have the which path information to pin it down. This is the standard headache of quantum mechanics, but the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment takes this into a much darker territory. We can mark the photons so we know their path, wait for them to hit the back wall, and record their position as particles, and then, only afterward, we can destroy the information we gathered about their path. The results of this experiment are enough to make a seasoned physicist want to retire and take up gardening. When we erase the information about which path the photon took, even after the photon has already hit the detector and finished its journey, the interference pattern magically reappears in the data. By deleting the knowledge of the how in the future, we have retroactively changed the behavior of the particle in the past. The photon, which hit the wall as a localized bullet because it was being watched, suddenly behaves as if it had always been a wave once the record of its path is destroyed. This is not just a trick of data processing. It is a fundamental restructuring of what happened. The future has the power to edit the history of a particle that has already finished its journey, proving that what happened is entirely dependent on what we know about it later. The past is not a fixed record. It is a set of probabilities that only settle into a single story once all the evidence is in, and later is when the jury finally deliberates. Think about the implications for your own life, for the memories you hold onto like anchors in a storm. If we can erase the history of a photon by simply destroying the information that defined its path, then your own history is only as solid as the information currently available to the universe. We are living in a reality where the facts of yesterday are being constantly re-evaluated and rewritten based on the measurements we take today. The universe is a radical skeptic that does not believe in a finished past. It only believes in a consistent present. If you could somehow erase the information of a past trauma or a specific choice, the quantum basement of reality suggests that the event itself would lose its particle-like definition and return to a state of wave-like probability. You're not just remembering the past. You are maintaining it through the act of holding onto the information. The moment that information is lost or scrambled, the past it describes begins to dissolve, revealing that the solid ground of your history was actually a thin crust of data floating on an ocean of uncertainty. This brings us to the most terrifying realization of the quantum eraser. The which path information of your entire life is being recorded by the environment around you. Every photon that bounces off your skin, every vibration you cause in the air, is a piece of data that marks your path through time and forces you to stay in a definite particle-like state. We are being constantly observed by the universe, which is why we feel like solid, linear beings rather than shimmering waves of possibility. But what happens if the universe loses that data? What happens if the information that defines you is scrambled or erased in the future? According to the logic of the quantum eraser, the version of you that exists right now would have to retroactively change to match that new, information-free state. We are participating in a cosmic bookkeeping exercise where the ledger is never closed, and the entries can be whited out at any moment. If we can erase the history of photon and watch its past self reconfigure in real time, what is stopping the universe from deciding that the history of you was just a clerical error it intends to correct? The clerical error is not just a possibility. It is a logical impossibility in a universe that demands absolute, uncompromising self-consistency. Igor Novikov proposed a principle that effectively kills the grandfather paradox by suggesting that the probability of an event that would change the past is exactly zero. If you try to go back in time and pull the trigger on your own ancestor, the gun will jam, or you will slip on a banana peel, or some other seemingly random coincidence will intervene. This is not because of a cosmic police force protecting the timeline, but because the very fact of your existence is the proof that you failed to pull that trigger. This logic extends far beyond the realm of science fiction and into the everyday choices you think you are making with your sovereign mind. If the future is sending confirmation waves back to the past to negotiate reality, then those waves have already arrived and been processed by the vacuum. Your decision to keep watching this video right now is not a choice you are making in real time. It is a necessary component of the standing wave that defines your current state. The script for your life has been finalized by the ending, and you are simply the actor hitting your marks, mistaking the heat of the stage lights for the fire of agency. We are trapped in the block universe, a four-dimensional monolith where every moment of time exists simultaneously, frozen like a fly in ancient amber. In this model, the distinction between past, present, and future is nothing more than a stubborn, biological hallucination. You feel the flow of time because your brain is a machine that processes information sequentially, but that flow is as fake as the movement in a flip book. The pages are all there, stacked on top of one another, and the story does not change just because you are currently looking at page 52. The future is not a void waiting to be filled by your decisions. It is a solid territory that you are already occupying. Your sense of becoming is just the lag between the quantum handshake and your consciousness finally catching up to the deal that was struck eons ago. You are an inhabitant of a static structure, a geometric shape in space-time that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, all existing with the same degree of permanence as a mountain. If the future influences the past, then every seemingly random occurrence in your life was actually a calculated requirement for a later event. That chance meeting with a stranger, the sudden impulse to turn left instead of right, the accident that changed everything. These were never rolls of the dice. They were the back-dated effects of a future cause that needed those specific conditions to exist to ensure the timeline remained logically sound. We like to think of ourselves as the protagonists of a story we are writing as we go, but we are actually just rereading a book we have already finished. The feeling of deciding is the psychological byproduct of the brain resolving a quantum state that was already determined by the handshake. Your free will is the shadow cast by a future that has already happened, a comforting lie told to you by a nervous system that cannot handle the truth of its own powerlessness. You are not the driver of the car. You're the passenger who has been convinced they are holding a steering wheel that is not connected to anything. Even the internal monologue you are using to process these words is a delayed reaction to a temporal agreement. You think you are weighing the evidence, deciding whether to believe this cynical perspective or dismiss it, but that decision was settled the moment the offer wave of your birth met the confirmation wave of your death. The universe does not allow for loose ends or contradictory timelines. It is a closed system that must be logically consistent at every point. This means that every thought you have is a necessary link in a chain that is anchored at both ends of time. The you that is finishing this sentence is already reaching back to inform the you that started it, ensuring that the thought remains coherent. You are a standing wave of information, a resonance between the beginning and the end, and the choice you feel is just the vibration of that wave as it settles into its fixed, eternal position. The version of you that has already finished this video has already decided what you think about it. Take a moment to look at the clock on the wall or the reflection in your screen and realize that you are looking at a countdown that has already hit 0. The ticking of the second hand is not measuring your progress toward an unknown future. It is measuring the unfolding of a map that was drawn before you were born. Your reflection is not a live feed of a changing person, but a cross-section of a four-dimensional entity that stretches from the cradle to the grave. You are an echo of your future self, a ripple moving backward from the point of your eventual disappearance. This realization is the final mirror, the one that strips away the vanity of the individual and reveals the cold clockwork underneath. You are not waiting for the future to arrive. You're simply catching up to the version of yourself that is already standing there, looking back at you with the bored indifference of a finished story. Every second you live is both a beginning and an end, a point on a circle that has no interest in your concept of progress. The journey you thought you were taking was never a line. It was always a circle. Every step you take toward what you think is next is actually a step back toward the origin point of the handshake that created you. We are like travelers on a round planet who think they are moving toward a horizon they will never reach, unaware that they are just retracing the same path over and over. The temporal vertigo you feel when contemplating retrocausality is the sensation of the loop finally closing, the moment the snake bites its own tail and the logic of the universe becomes airtight. There is no escape from the consistency of the block, no way to veer off the path that your future has already paved for you. You are a part of a self-correcting machine that uses your own life as the medium for its calculations, ensuring that the end always justifies the beginning. Your past is a draft, but the future has already signed the final copy. We have spent our lives fearing the unknown of the future, never realizing that the future is the only thing we can truly rely on to be solid. It is the past that is the ghost, the draft, the shifting sand that we are constantly trying to stabilize with our current observations. But once you accept the handshake, the fear evaporates and is replaced by a heavy, cold sense of inevitability. You are exactly where you are supposed to be because you could not be anywhere else. The math of the universe will not allow it. The pressure you feel to succeed, to change, to become something better is a hallucination born of a misunderstanding of your own geometry. You are already complete, a finished work of art that is merely being revealed to itself one frame at a time. The future is not a mystery to be solved. It is a memory you have not accessed yet, a shadow that has been looming over your past since the very first second of your existence. As you sit there in the silence of this realization, understand that the version of you that has already finished this video is currently looking back at you. That version of you knows exactly how this feels, and they're sending a signal back through the handshake to confirm that the loop is secure. You are not a traveler in time. You are the time itself, a permanent fixture of the cosmos that will always be sitting in this chair, reading these words at this exact coordinate in the block. The clock is not ticking. It's south just vibrating in place, holding the shape of your life against the vacuum of non-existence. You are the echo of a sound that has not stopped ringing, a standing wave between two shores that are both, in reality, the same place. Look at the clock one last time and feel the weight of the future pulling on your heart, not as a destination, but as the source of everything you have ever been. Stop waiting for the future to happen. It already did.